In the days that followed, Jake remained unconscious, his body lying motionless in a makeshift medical bay at the facility. Lisa and Dr. Dawson kept constant watch over him, monitoring his vitals and the activity of the Invictium panels. The metal had grown eerily quiet since Jake's sacrifice, but neither woman trusted the silence. They knew Caltharian was still there, waiting. News of the events spread quickly, though much of it was distorted or misunderstood. Governments and corporations scrambled to respond, torn between fear of the entities and greed for the power Invictium represented. Some called for immediate destruction of all Invictium, while others pushed for aggressive measures to harness its potential. Amidst the chaos, a small but vocal group began advocating for peace, urging humanity to honor the agreement Jake had made with Caltharian. Dr. Dawson took it upon herself to address the world. Using encrypted broadcasts, she shared their findings, explaining the risks and urging caution. She spoke of Jake's bravery, emphasizing that his actions had bought humanity time, but only if they chose to use it wisely. Her words resonated with many, sparking protests and petitions demanding an end to Invictium production. Slowly, public opinion began to shift. After nearly a week, Jake stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then locking onto Lisa's face. "What happened?" he croaked, his voice weak. "You did it," Lisa said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You stabilized the connection. The entities, they've stopped pushing." Jake tried to sit up, but his body felt heavy, drained. Dr. Dawson stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're safe. For now. But you'll need time to recover." The strain on your mind was immense. Over the next few days, Jake recounted what he had experienced during the merger. He described how Caltharian had shown him glimpses of its kind, a vast collective intelligence stranded between dimensions after a catastrophic event. They weren't malevolent, but they were desperate, willing to do whatever it took to escape their limbo. Jake explained that he had negotiated a fragile truce. Caltharian would allow humanity to dismantle Invictium gradually, provided they promised never to recreate it. The global response was mixed. Many nations agreed to halt production, dismantling facilities under international supervision. Others resisted, clinging to the belief that Invictium could be controlled. Violent clashes erupted in several regions as tensions boiled over. Yet even amidst the conflict, signs of hope emerged. Communities banded together, sharing resources and knowledge in ways they hadn't before. The crisis forced humanity to confront its own flaws and consider a future built not on domination, but cooperation. As weeks turned into months, Earth began to heal. Facilities housing Invictium were carefully decommissioned, their contents destroyed or buried deep underground. The whispers faded entirely, leaving behind an uneasy calm. Jake, though physically recovered, carried the weight of his experience. He became an advocate for responsible scientific progress, speaking out against unchecked ambition. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake stood with Lisa and Dr. Dawson outside the now empty facility. The air was cool, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant laughter from nearby homes. For the first time in a long while, Jake felt a glimmer of hope. "We did the right thing," Lisa said softly, breaking the silence. "Maybe," Jake replied, gazing at the stars. "But this isn't the end. Whatever's out there, Caltharian, its kind, the universe itself, it's bigger than us. All we can do is keep trying to understand." Dr. Dawson nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And maybe, just maybe, we'll learn to coexist, not just with them, but with each other." As they walked away, the sky stretched endlessly above them, vast and full of possibilities. Humanity had been given a second chance, one born of sacrifice and humility. Whether they would rise to meet the challenge remained to be seen. But for now, the future looked brighter than it had in years. The situation escalated faster than anyone had anticipated. News of the entities trapped within Invictium leaked to the public, sparking panic and division across the globe. Some people viewed Caltharion and its kind as saviors, offering humanity a chance to evolve and unlock untold knowledge. Others saw them as an existential threat, warning that granting them freedom could lead to humanity's destruction. Governments and militaries doubled down on their efforts to control Invictum, ignoring calls for caution or restraint. Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson watched helplessly as chaos unfolded around them. Military convoys rolled into cities, securing facilities where Invictum was stored. Scientists who had once supported their cause were silenced or forced to comply with government orders. Even the small group of trusted experts they had confided in began to fracture under pressure. Some sided with world leaders, arguing that humanity needed to defend itself at all costs. Others disappeared entirely, fearing retaliation if they spoke out. Amidst the growing tension, Jake realized something. Waiting for others to act wasn't going to work. Humanity was too divided, too consumed by fear and greed. If there was any hope of averting disaster, it would have to come from him. And Caltharion. "I need to go back," Jake said one evening, breaking the silence in the lab. Lisa and Dr. Dawson looked up from their work, startled. "What do you mean?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with worry. "You can't keep doing this, Jake. It's too dangerous." "I don't have a choice," Jake replied, his tone firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "Caltharion said the barrier is weakening. If we wait much longer, it might break on its own. And then we'll lose all control. I need to offer myself as a bridge." Dr. Dawson stepped forward, her expression grave. "What are you saying? You want to merge with it?" Jake nodded slowly. "If I become part of the connection, maybe I can stabilize things long enough for us to figure out a solution. Maybe I can convince Caltharion to give us more time, or at least protect humanity while it crosses over." Lisa shook her head furiously. "No way. That's suicide. We don't even know what will happen to you." "It's the only option left," Jake insisted. "If I don't try, we're all dead anyway." After hours of heated argument, Dr. Dawson reluctantly agreed to help prepare the neural interface for one final attempt. She added every safeguard she could think of, but deep down, she knew the risks were astronomical. As they set up the equipment, Lisa avoided looking at Jake, tears streaming silently down her face. When everything was ready, Jake took his place near the Invictum panels. He closed his eyes and focused on slowing his breathing, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside him. Dr. Dawson activated the device, and Jake felt the now familiar surge of energy course through him. This time, the transition was different. Instead of finding himself in the shimmering void, Jake felt Caltharion's presence flood into his mind. The entity's voice resonated louder than ever before, blending with his thoughts until he could no longer tell where he ended and it began. "You have chosen sacrifice," Caltharion said, its tone almost reverent. "Few of your kind would dare such a thing." "I'm not doing this for you," Jake replied, his mental voice steady despite the overwhelming sensations coursing through him. "I'm doing it for my world. For humanity. If you want to cross over, you'll honor our agreement, and you'll let me guide the process." Caltharion hesitated, then acquiesced. "Very well. But know this, the path ahead will test you beyond measure." As the connection deepened, Jake felt his consciousness expand, stretching beyond the limits of his human body. Pain shot through him, sharp and unrelenting, but he gritted his teeth and held on. Through sheer willpower, he managed to establish a fragile balance, a temporary truce between two worlds. Back in the lab, Lisa and Dr. Dawson watched in stunned silence as Jake slumped forward, unconscious but alive. The hum of the Invictum panels faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. For the first time in weeks, the whispers were gone. But both women knew the fight was far from over. Whatever happened next would depend on whether Jake could maintain the fragile link, and whether humanity would finally listen before it was too late. Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson knew they were running out of time. The whispers from the Invictum panels had grown louder and more frequent, almost deafening at times. Workers in the facility reported seeing strange shadows moving across walls, even during daylight hours. Equipment continued to malfunction unpredictably, and some staff members refused to enter rooms lined with Invictium altogether. It was clear that Caltharion and its kind weren't waiting patiently for humanity's decision. The trio decided to reach out to a small group of trusted scientists, people who understood the importance of caution and ethical responsibility. They carefully selected individuals who had no ties to governments or corporations, ensuring their intentions remained pure. Using encrypted messages and secure channels, they arranged a secret meeting at a remote research outpost far from prying eyes. When the day arrived, Jake felt a mix of hope and dread as he, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson greeted the handful of experts who had agreed to help. Among them was Dr. Marcus Hale, an astrophysicist known for his work on interdimensional theories, and Dr. Elena Ruiz, a linguist specializing in decoding unknown languages. Both listened intently as Jake recounted his encounters with Caltharion and shared the recordings of the whispers. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Hale said after hearing the evidence. "If what you're saying is true, these entities could hold answers to questions we've been asking for centuries. But releasing them into our world, that's a risk I'm not sure we can take." Dr. Ruiz nodded in agreement. "Their language is unlike anything I've ever encountered. It suggests a level of intelligence far beyond human comprehension. But intelligence doesn't always mean benevolence." The group spent hours debating the best course of action. Some argued that humanity should destroy all traces of Invictium, cutting off the entity's connection to this world entirely. Others believed that attempting to communicate further and perhaps negotiate terms was worth the risk. In the end, they reached a compromise. They would try one final session with Caltharion, setting strict conditions before agreeing to any kind of release. Back at the facility, they prepared for the third and most critical attempt at communication. This time, they used advanced algorithms to translate real-time responses from the entities, hoping to clarify their demands. Jake once again volunteered to serve as the link, despite Lisa's protests. "It's too dangerous," she insisted. "What if something goes wrong?" "I'll be fine," Jake replied, though his voice betrayed his fear. "We don't have another choice." As the neural interface powered up, the room grew eerily quiet. Jake closed his eyes, bracing himself for what was to come. When he opened them, he found himself face to face with Caltharion once more. The entity's form shimmered with an intensity that made it hard to look directly at. "You return again," Caltharion said. "Have you chosen?" "We need guarantees," Jake said firmly. "If we let you cross over, you must agree to leave humanity alone unless approached peacefully. No interference, no destruction." Caltharion hesitated, its form flickering slightly. "Your terms are acceptable, for now. But know this, the barrier weakens with each passing moment. Delaying will only bring chaos." With the agreement tentatively in place, Jake returned to reality, exhausted but relieved. The group quickly drafted a detailed proposal outlining how to dismantle Invictium production while allowing limited interaction with the entities. They sent their findings to key figures in the scientific community, urging immediate action. But as the days passed, reports emerged of military forces mobilizing near facilities housing Invictium. Governments, unwilling to relinquish their newfound power, began preparing for conflict. Humanity stood divided, teetering on the brink of war, not just with itself, but with beings far greater than anyone could imagine. Jake looked at Lisa and Dr. Dawson, his heart heavy with doubt. Had they done enough? Or had they simply delayed the inevitable? The second attempt to communicate with Caltharion required careful preparation. Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson worked around the clock to improve the neural interface, adding safeguards to prevent overwhelming Jake's mind. They also set up barriers in the facility, using insulated walls and energy dampeners to limit the entity's influence. If things went wrong, they wanted to minimize the damage. When everything was ready, Jake took his place once again near the Invictium panels. This time, he felt more nervous than before. The memory of Caltharian's shifting form lingered in his mind, as did its cryptic warnings. Still, he knew someone had to do it. Taking a deep breath, he gave Dr. Dawson a nod, and she activated the device. The world around Jake dissolved instantly. He found himself back in the shimmering, otherworldly space, surrounded by swirling patterns of light and shadow. Caltharian stood before him, its presence even more imposing than before. The entity seemed to sense Jake's fear, but made no move to intimidate him further. "You have returned," Caltharian said, its voice resonating deeply. "Have you decided?" Jake swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. "Not yet. We need answers first. You said you'd offer knowledge. What kind of knowledge? And what do you want from us?" Caltharian paused, as if considering the question. Then it began to speak, not in words, but in images and sensations that flooded Jake's mind. He saw glimpses of distant stars, ancient civilizations, and technologies far beyond human comprehension. It was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose. But amidst the chaos, one message came through clearly. The entities wanted freedom, but they also sought connection, a chance to share their wisdom with humanity. "We are not your enemies," Caltharian continued, "but we cannot remain trapped forever. Your metal has weakened the barrier between our realms. If you refuse us, the barrier will collapse on its own, and the consequences will be catastrophic." Jake struggled to process everything he was seeing and hearing. "If we help you cross over, how can we trust you won't hurt us? How do we know this isn't a trick?" Caltharian's form shifted, becoming more stable, almost human-like. "We cannot guarantee your safety. No being can. But we offer this, a pact. Allow us to enter your world, and we will share our knowledge. Together, we may find a way to coexist." Before Jake could respond, the vision faded, and he was pulled back to reality. Gasping for air, he tore off the neural interface and looked at Lisa and Dr. Dawson. Both were watching him intently, waiting for an explanation. "They want a deal," Jake said after catching his breath. "They'll share their knowledge with us if we let them cross over. But they didn't promise not to hurt us if things go wrong." Dr. Dawson frowned, her mind racing. "This is bigger than us. We can't make this decision alone. We need to tell someone. Someone who can handle it responsibly." Lisa shook her head. "Who? The government? Corporations. They'll only care about power. They'll use the entities for their own gain without thinking about the risks." "She's right," Jake added. "If word gets out, people will panic, or worse, try to weaponize them. We have to keep this quiet, at least for now." Dr. Dawson hesitated but eventually nodded. "Then we'll take it to the scientific community. Trusted colleagues who understand the stakes. People who value knowledge over profit or control." As they discussed their next steps, the hum of the Invictium panels grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. It was a reminder of the power and danger of the metal they had created. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Humanity stood on the edge of a new frontier, and the choices they made would shape the future of both worlds. For better or worse, Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson were now the bridge between two realities, and they couldn't afford to fail. The group sat in stunned silence after Jake recounted his experience with Caltharian. The weight of what he had described hung heavy in the air, pressing down on all of them. Lisa stared at the floor, her hands clasped tightly together, while Dr. Dawson paced back and forth, muttering to herself. Jake leaned forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, trying to process everything that had happened. "So it's real," Lisa said finally, breaking the silence. "These beings, they're actually there." Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, and they're not happy being stuck wherever they are. They want out." Dr. Dawson stopped pacing and turned to face them. Her expression was grim but resolute. "If what you saw is true, and I have no reason to doubt you, then we're dealing with something far beyond anything humanity has ever encountered. These entities aren't just intelligent, they're ancient. They'd been trapped for who knows how long, and now Invictium has given them a way to reach us. What do we do? Lisa asked, her voice trembling. We can't just let them loose without knowing what they'll do. No, we can't, Dr. Dawson agreed. But we also can't ignore them. If Caltharian is telling the truth, and if there are others like it, we need to find a way to communicate further, to understand their intentions. Jake rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. They said they'd offer knowledge, secrets about the universe or something. But they also said they couldn't promise to leave us alone. What if letting them out makes things worse? That's the risk, Dr. Dawson admitted. But doing nothing might be even more dangerous. If these entities are powerful enough to manifest through Invictium, imagine what they could do if they decided to force their way into our world. The thought sent a chill through the room. None of them wanted to consider the possibility of an unstoppable force wreaking havoc on Earth. Still, the idea of releasing something so alien and potentially hostile was terrifying. We need more data, Dr. Dawson said firmly. More recordings, more translations. Maybe we can piece together more of what they're saying. If we can learn more about their motives, we might be able to negotiate. Over the next few days, the trio worked tirelessly, refining their equipment and capturing as much information as possible. The whispers grew louder and more frequent, almost as if Caltharian and its kind were aware of their efforts. Fragments of new phrases emerge. Your time is short. Choose wisely. Each message added urgency to their work. One evening, as they reviewed the latest batch of recordings, Lisa noticed something unusual. One of the translated phrases stood out. A bridge must be built. She pointed it out to Jake and Dr. Dawson, who exchanged uneasy glances. What does that mean? Lisa asked. A bridge between what? Between worlds, Dr. Dawson said quietly. Or dimensions. Caltharian mentioned being trapped between realms. Maybe they're asking us to help them cross over completely. Jake frowned. You think they want us to build some kind of portal or something? It's possible, Dr. Dawson replied. But if we do that, we'd be inviting them into our reality. We'd have to trust that they won't destroy us once they're here. The room fell silent again as the enormity of the decision settled over them. They were three ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation, tasked with making a choice that could shape the future of humanity. None of them felt ready for such a responsibility, but they knew they couldn't avoid it. Finally, Jake spoke up. We don't have a choice. We have to try talking to them again. Figure out exactly what they want, and what they're willing to give in return. Dr. Dawson nodded. Agreed. But this time, we'll prepare better. We'll set limits, boundaries. If they want to cross over, they'll have to play by our rules. As they began planning their next steps, the hum of the Invictium panel seemed to grow louder, almost like a heartbeat. It was a constant reminder of the power and danger of the metal they had created. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Humanity stood on the brink of a new era, and there was no turning back. The next few days were a blur of tension and uncertainty for Jake, Lisa, and Dr. Dawson. They spent every waking moment analyzing the recordings of the whispers, trying to piece together more information about the entities behind them. The phrases they uncovered grew clearer, but no less unsettling. We are ancient, the voices said at one point. You have awakened us. Another time, they warned, your world will change. Despite their growing fear, the trio pressed on. They knew they couldn't ignore what they had discovered. If the entities were truly as powerful as they seemed, humanity needed to understand their intentions before it was too late. But how could they communicate with something so alien? That question weighed heavily on all of them. Dr. Dawson suggested using neural interfaces, devices designed to connect human minds directly with technology. These tools were typically used for controlling advanced machines or accessing virtual environments, but she believed they might also allow someone to interact with the entities trapped within Invictium. It was a risky idea, bordering on reckless, but none of them had a better plan. After much debate, Jake volunteered to be the test subject. "It's my fault we're in this mess," he said quietly. "If I hadn't fixed that equipment, maybe none of this would have happened. I need to make it right." Lisa protested immediately. "This isn't your fault, Jake. You didn't ask for any of this." But Jake was firm. He argued that he had already been exposed to the effects of Invictum more than anyone else, making him the logical choice. Reluctantly, Lisa and Dr. Dawson agreed. They prepared the neural interface carefully, ensuring every connection was secure. Jake sat in a chair near one of the Invictum panels, wires attached to his temples and forehead. His hands gripped the armrests tightly as Dr. Dawson activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sharp jolt ran through Jake's body, and his vision blurred. When his eyes cleared, he found himself standing in a strange, otherworldly space. The air shimmered like liquid light, and shapes moved around him. Forms that shifted between human-like figures and abstract patterns. In the center of the room stood a being unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Its form constantly changed, sometimes appearing solid, other times dissolving into streams of energy. "I am Caltharian," the entity said, its voice resonating not just in Jake's ears but in his mind. "We are many, yet one. You have called us forth." Jake struggled to speak, his throat dry with fear. What do you want?" "We seek freedom," Caltharian replied. "Your metal has drawn us closer to your world. It amplifies our presence, allowing us to manifest. But we are trapped between realms, unable to fully cross over. Why should we trust you?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. "How do we know you won't hurt us?" Caltharian paused, as if considering the question. "We do not wish to harm you. We seek only to exist. However, if you refuse us, we will find another way. The consequences may be dire." Jake felt a surge of panic. He wanted to run, to escape this bizarre encounter, but he knew he couldn't. Humanity's fate rested on his shoulders. Taking a deep breath, he asked, "What happens if we let you go? Will you leave us alone?" "We cannot promise that," Caltharian admitted. "But we can offer knowledge, secrets of the universe beyond your understanding. Perhaps together, we can coexist." Before Jake could respond, the connection broke. He gasped, snapping back to reality as the neural interface powered down. Lisa and Dr. Dawson rushed to his side, their faces filled with concern. "What did you see?" Lisa asked urgently. Jake hesitated, still processing what had just happened. Finally, he said, "We don't have much time. Caltharian wants out, and if we don't figure out how to handle this, things are going to get worse." For the first time since the discovery of Invictum, Jake realized the true scale of the challenge ahead. This wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about deciding whether humanity deserved to survive alongside beings far greater than themselves. Jake and Lisa knew they couldn't keep what they had discovered to themselves. The strange noises, the malfunctioning equipment, the eerie feeling that something was watching them. It all pointed to something far bigger than either of them could handle alone. But who would believe them? Governments and corporations were already obsessed with Invictum, eager to exploit its power for their own gain. Telling the wrong person might only make things worse. They decided to reach out to Dr. Emily Dawson, the scientist who had helped create Invictum. If anyone would understand the seriousness of the situation, it was her. Lisa sent a carefully worded message, avoiding any mention of whispers or shadows. Instead, she framed it as a technical issue, strange malfunctions linked to the metal's energy absorption properties. To their relief, Dr. Dawson agreed to meet them at the facility the next day. When Dr. Dawson arrived, she looked tired but determined. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in the damaged equipment and the Invictum panels lining the walls. Jake and Lisa explained everything they had observed, from the flickering lights to the mysterious voices. At first, Dr. Dawson listened quietly, her expression unreadable. But when Lisa mentioned the whispers, the scientist's face turned pale. I've been hearing them too, Dr. Dawson admitted softly. Back at the lab, late at night. I thought I was imagining things, but now. She trailed off, shaking her head. This changes everything. The three of them spent hours discussing what might be causing the phenomena. Dr. Dawson shared her findings about Invictium's unusual behavior, how it didn't just absorb energy, but seemed to alter it in unpredictable ways. She theorized that the metal might be interacting with something beyond human understanding, perhaps even opening some kind of doorway. The idea sounded crazy, but none of them could deny the evidence piling up around them. As the conversation continued, the whispers grew louder. At first, they were faint, almost like static in the background. But soon, the voices became clear enough to make out individual words. "Release us," they said over and over, each repetition more urgent than the last. Jake felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He glanced at Lisa and Dr. Dawson, both of whom looked equally shaken. "We need to shut this down," Lisa said finally, her voice trembling. "Whatever's happening here, it's not safe. We can't let this go on." Dr. Dawson nodded slowly. "I agree. But we have to be careful. If we act too hastily, we risk making things worse. Invictium is already being mass-produced. Destroying it won't be easy." Jake clenched his fists. "Then what do we do? Just sit here and wait for whatever's behind this to come through?" "No," Dr. Dawson said firmly. "We need to learn more. If these entities are trying to communicate, maybe we can find a way to talk back." The idea was risky, but none of them had a better plan. Using spare parts from the damaged equipment, they cobbled together a crude recording device. They set it up near one of the Invictium panels and began capturing the whispers. Hours passed as they analyzed the recordings, searching for patterns or meaning. It wasn't long before they noticed something strange. The voices weren't random. They formed phrases, almost like sentences, though the language was unlike anything they'd ever heard. Dr. Dawson suggested running the recordings through translation software designed for deciphering alien signals. The process took time, but eventually, fragments of coherent phrases emerged. "We are here," the voices said. "You cannot contain us." Each new revelation sent a fresh wave of fear through the group. Whatever was trapped within the Invictium, it was intelligent, and it wanted out. As the sun began to rise outside, casting pale light through the windows, Jake felt a deep sense of unease settle over him. They had uncovered the truth, but now they faced an impossible choice. Could they trust the entities behind the voices, or was releasing them a recipe for disaster? One thing was certain: humanity's future depended on the decisions they made next, and none of them felt ready for the responsibility. When Jake arrived at the facility, the atmosphere was tense. The usually bustling building felt eerily quiet, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Lisa greeted him near the entrance, her face pale and drawn. She didn't say much at first, just motioned for him to follow her deeper into the complex. As they walked, Jake noticed that some of the lights in the hallways flickered unpredictably. The hum he had heard during his last visit was louder now, a low, droning sound that seemed to vibrate in his chest. Lisa led him to a large room filled with equipment, most of it damaged or malfunctioning. Invictium panels lined the walls, their silvery surfaces reflecting the dim light in strange, distorted ways. Jake frowned as he examined the machinery. Some of the devices looked like they had been exposed to extreme heat, their metal casings warped and blackened. Others appeared perfectly fine on the outside, but refused to power on no matter what Jake tried. It was as if the technology had simply given up. "This isn't normal," Jake said, turning to Lisa. "It's like the equipment is breaking down for no reason." Lisa nodded slowly, her hands trembling as she held a clipboard. "It started happening after we brought in more Invictium panels. At first, it was small things, lights going out, computers freezing. But now," her voice trailed off, and she glanced nervously at the walls. "Now it feels like the building itself is alive." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Alive? What do you mean? She hesitated before answering. The whispers. They're louder now. Everyone hears them, not just me. And sometimes I think I see things moving in the corners of my eyes. Shadows, shapes. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to dismiss her words as stress or paranoia, but he couldn't ignore the unease growing inside him. Something about this place felt wrong, unnatural. He decided to focus on the task at hand, hoping that fixing the equipment might distract him from the creeping sense of dread. As he worked, Jake began to notice patterns in the malfunctions. The devices closest to the Invictium panels were the worst affected, while those farther away seemed relatively untouched. It was almost as if the metal was interfering with the technology, corrupting it somehow. But how? And why? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp noise, a loud crackling sound that echoed through the room. Jake spun around, his heart racing, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Lisa, however, looked terrified. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "The voices," she said, her voice barely audible. "They're clearer now. They're saying something about being trapped." Jake stared at her, unsure of what to say. Part of him wanted to leave right then and there, to walk away from this place and never look back. But another part, the stubborn, curious part, urged him to stay. If there really was something strange happening here, he needed to understand it. Maybe, just maybe, he could figure out what was going on and put a stop to it. Over the next few hours, Jake and Lisa worked together to gather data. They recorded the sounds, took readings from the Invictium panels, and documented every strange occurrence they witnessed. The whispers grew louder and more distinct, forming fragmented phrases that sent chills down their spines. Words like "release us" and "we are here" repeated over and over, haunting them even when the room fell silent. By the time they finished, both were exhausted and shaken. As they packed up their tools, Lisa turned to Jake with a desperate look in her eyes. "We need to tell someone about this," she said. "Someone who can help." Jake nodded, though he wasn't sure who that someone would be. Whoever it was, they would have to act fast, because whatever was happening with Invictium, it was only getting worse, and Jake had a sinking feeling that time was running out. The first real test of Invictium came sooner than anyone expected. In a remote region of Eastern Europe, two rival factions clashed in a bitter conflict over control of resources. One side, equipped with outdated firearms and fragile body armor, stood little chance against the other, which wielded advanced plasma rifles and laser cannons. The battle seemed destined to end quickly, with one side crushed under the weight of superior technology. But then something unexpected happened. A small group of soldiers arrived on the scene, clad in sleek suits made entirely of Invictium. Their armor gleamed faintly in the sunlight as they marched forward without hesitation. The opposing forces opened fire immediately, unleashing a storm of energy blasts that lit up the battlefield. To everyone's astonishment, the Invictium-clad soldiers didn't even flinch. The energy weapons hit their armor and vanished, absorbed completely by the mysterious metal. Not a single soldier fell. News crews captured footage of the event, broadcasting it live to millions of viewers around the world. People watched in awe as the Invictium-equipped soldiers pushed forward, unstoppable and unharmed. The tide of the battle turned instantly. Within minutes, the opposing forces surrendered, overwhelmed by an enemy they couldn't harm. The video went viral almost overnight, sparking debates and discussions across every corner of the globe. Some hailed Invictium as humanity's salvation, while others warned of the dangers of relying too heavily on such powerful technology. Back in Chicago, Jake Thompson sat glued to his screen, replaying the footage over and over. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Soldiers walking through walls of fire like ghosts. Entire armies rendered powerless in seconds. It was both incredible and terrifying. Jake tried to focus on his work, tinkering with a broken engine in his garage, but his mind kept drifting back to the whispers Lisa had mentioned. Something about Invictum didn't feel right, and the more he thought about it, the stronger that feeling became. Meanwhile, Dr. Emily Dawson and Ryan Caldwell were busy dealing with the fallout from the battle. Governments and corporations flooded their lab with requests for samples of Invictum. Military officials demanded immediate access to the material, promising funding and support in exchange. At first, Dr. Dawson was proud of their achievement. She believed Invictum could bring peace by making war obsolete. But as the days passed, she began to notice strange things happening around the lab. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Computers froze mid-task, only to restart moments later as if nothing had happened. Lights flickered in rooms lined with Invictum panels, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Even Ryan started acting strangely, muttering to himself late at night and avoiding eye contact during meetings. When Dr. Dawson confronted him, he admitted he'd been hearing noises, soft, indistinct sounds that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Determined to get answers, Dr. Dawson ran additional tests on Invictum. She discovered anomalies in its energy absorption patterns. Instead of simply storing energy, the metal appeared to be altering it in unpredictable ways. The changes were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they were there. Worried, Dr. Dawson called an emergency meeting with her team. She urged them to halt production of Invictum until they understood its full effects. But her warnings fell on deaf ears. The world wanted Invictum, and no one was willing to wait. As tensions rose, Jake received another call from Lisa. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. She told him the situation at the facility had grown worse. The whispers had become louder, clearer, and impossible to ignore. Workers reported hearing voices speaking in languages they didn't recognize. Some claimed to see shadowy figures moving in the corners of their vision. Others quit outright, refusing to set foot near the Invictum panels again. Jake knew he had to help. Despite his growing unease, he agreed to meet Lisa at the facility. As he drove through the dark streets of Chicago, his thoughts raced. What had they unleashed? Was Invictum truly a miracle, or was it something far more dangerous? He didn't have answers, but one thing was certain. The metal was changing everything, and not necessarily for the better. In the year 2147, humanity made a discovery that would change everything. It all started in a small research lab hidden deep within the mountains of Colorado. The lab was run by Dr. Emily Dawson, a woman known for her sharp mind and quiet determination. Working alongside her was Ryan Caldwell, a young scientist who had a knack for solving problems no one else could touch. Together, they were part of a team tasked with finding new materials to help humanity survive in an increasingly dangerous universe. For years, energy weapons had ruled the battlefield. Lasers, plasma rifles, and pulse cannons made traditional armor useless. Soldiers died in droves because nothing could stop the destructive power of these advanced tools. But Dr. Dawson and her team refused to give up. They spent countless hours testing metals, alloys, and compounds, searching for something, anything, that could turn the tide. And then, one day, they found it. It began as a simple experiment. A sample of an unknown mineral arrived at the lab from a mining operation on Mars. At first glance, it didn't look special, just a dull gray rock sitting on a metal tray. But when the scientists ran tests, they discovered something extraordinary. When exposed to intense heat or energy, the material absorbed it completely. Not only that, but it seemed to store the energy inside itself, like a sponge soaking up water. Intrigued, Dr. Dawson decided to refine the mineral into a usable form. After months of work, they created what they called Invictum, a sleek, silvery metal stronger than anything humanity had ever seen. The implications were staggering. Armor made from Invictum could withstand even the most powerful energy weapons without a scratch. Shields built with the metal became impenetrable barriers. For the first time in decades, humanity had a way to fight back against its enemies. News of the discovery spread quickly, reaching governments, militaries, and corporations around the world. Everyone wanted a piece of Invictum, but not everyone was excited about the breakthrough. Some people worried about what such a powerful material might mean for the future. Among them was Jake Thompson, a mechanic living in Chicago. Jake wasn't a scientist or a soldier. He just fixed machines for a living. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about Invictum felt wrong. He tried to ignore it at first, focusing instead on his daily routine. But late at night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind kept returning to the news reports he'd seen. Soldiers wearing Invictum suits walking through walls of fire like gods. Entire armies rendered powerless in seconds. One evening, while working on a broken hoverbike in his garage, Jake got a call from an old friend named Lisa Martinez. She worked for a private defense contractor and had been assigned to a project involving Invictum. Her voice sounded tense as she asked if Jake could come over to take a look at some equipment that had malfunctioned during testing. Though reluctant, Jake agreed. He figured it would be an easy job, not realizing how much it would change his life. When Jake arrived at the facility, Lisa greeted him with a nervous smile. She led him to a large room filled with machines and glowing panels of Invictum lining the walls. As Jake examined the damaged equipment, he noticed something strange. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive, and there was a faint hum coming from the Invictum panels. When he mentioned it to Lisa, she hesitated before admitting that other workers had reported hearing odd noises too. Whispers, faint but unnerving, echoing through the halls. Jake brushed it off as stress or imagination, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the unease growing inside him. Something about Invictum didn't sit right. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a story far bigger and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined.